Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Title card, baby. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the ups and downs of Beyond Galaxyland, shall we? Wow. I'm impressed. Let's start there. So this game is interesting, and that is a massive understatement. Let's start here. This isn't exactly my kind of game. Turn-based RPGs, and that's what this is. This is essentially, at its core, a turn-based RPG with a more of a traditional style as far as the actual gameplay mechanics. Aren't on the top of my list as far as like favorite genres, and I know they are for a lot of people, and I try to treat that delicately when I review them. However, among the dozen and a half or so that I've now put on my list, maybe a little bit more than that, this is up there as one of my very favorites. It doesn't have much to do with the actual turn-based combat, but let me tell you what this game does do exceptionally well. First things first, I would normally evaluate art design and music separately, because you can have games with great art design and bad music and vice versa, right? We're gonna get out of that. I don't want to show any spoilers or anything. But this is the number one thing that, and I immediately picked up on this with this game. There is some kind of magical alchemy with this that this game has captured by taking this art design, that this pixelated 3D, 2D art design that this game has, which is, by the way, freaking gorgeous. It is perfectly executed. It looks awesome. Paired with the very interesting and unique choice in its music, in its soundtrack. There's something about those two things that are both awesome separately, but when they blend, when they come together, they build something in the scenes of this game that is greater than the sum of its parts. There is something magical about the tone of this game. There's just something about the music and the art design put together that make this whole feeling around this world and, worlds that this universe that this game takes place in, that just makes it feel so like the emotion in the game is like really palpable. And it just helps it's just a great vehicle to drive the motivations of the characters and everything forward. It's like there's the game is like, it's like a bowl of spaghetti or like a dish that's already very tasty, but then you put the seasoning on top, that is the art design and the music, and it just sends it to the next level. So that's the first thing that I noticed, and I noticed that pretty quickly because it's just very first 5 seconds of the game. You notice that it's just weird alchemy that this game has somehow stumbled on. Now, as far as the story goes, that's the dish, right? Well, that's at least part of the main dish is like the gameplay and the story. And the story in this game is phenomenal. It's driven to a transcendent place because of the art design and the music, but even the story at its core is very, very good. A lot of turn-based RPGs that have very complicated stories, they fall into one of two traps. A lot of times. Either they're extremely complicated and they're hard to follow, or there's a lot of hand waviness where it's like, oh, they just time travel or, blah, 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 ancient gods, blah, 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 don't worry about it. And things don't really, there are like loopholes, there are things that don't really make a lot of sense. This game does a really good job of handling some very large ideas and concepts, but everything contextually makes sense in the story. The motivations of the characters make sense. The characters are flawed in understandable ways, and they make poor decisions sometimes in ways that are understandable considering the circumstances. I believed every line every character said. Everything made sense, and especially toward the end when you start to get some reveals, things start to make more and more sense. And so let's talk about that too without spoiling anything. The story was A tier to God tier already, all the way through, and then the ending for this game is freaking great. It wraps up in a way that's very satisfying. That's the payoff is there. There are so many games in this genre and otherwise that just kind of end, or maybe they give you a satisfying ending, but it doesn't really make sense. Like the character you find out the character actually lived, but they don't really ever explain how or why, or like there's a lot of that. This game does a good job of keeping it all in the bounds of believability, but still giving you something really satisfying. So I love the story from start to finish. I mean, all of it is great. Just the premise forward. It's all, the setup is great, and then everything that happens after that, I have no notes. It was all great. Now, getting into also just another perk. I don't think we ran into a single bug. There were a couple of things that I thought were bugs, and then turned out not to be. But the game never crashed. I'm playing at this. I played this at launch, like the moment it came out. No crashes, no noticeable bugs. And this is a one-man developer, if I understand it correctly. A guy named Sam Enright. And I didn't run into a single issue. Not a single tech issue that I can remember. There were a couple of times that I thought maybe it was a bug, but then I found out I was wrong. That's how it was supposed to work. So that's great as well. As far as critiques go, I don't think the game is perfect. I think something that maybe could have elevated it to a more epic status. Well, for a turn-based RPG, it's quite short. I think it took me like 9 hours to beat it. I only did what was absolutely necessary. There is a lot of side content in this game. I skipped that. But for main story only, it's pretty short. I think it took me like 9 hours to beat it. So it's, most JRPGs. Now, I will say that a lot of JRPGs have a problem with being bloated. And this game definitely does not have that problem. That's not really a critique. I don't have a problem with that at all. But it's worth noting for people that like JRPGs, they might be used to a longer runtime. Aside from that, it's also very easy. And, I ran into this exact same type of game, actually very similar, a lot of similarities, a lot of parallels in general with Sea of Stars. If you've played Sea of Stars or are familiar with that, that game was a little bit longer, but it was this combination of great gameplay, great art design, great story, but it was a breeze. This game has that same trait. I won't call it a pitfall or a problem necessarily, because it doesn't appear to be unintentional. But I think what would have elevated it even further for me, not necessarily length necessarily, but some more challenge, because I got a lot of consumables. I got a whole bunch of different skills and abilities and spells and things like that I never even touched because I didn't need to. I find that my regular attack, especially toward the end, and I was not, you could level up your characters a lot more if you're doing the side stuff. I didn't do any of that. And I died once, and it was very early in the game when I was still trying to figure things out. I died one time. I never actually lost to anything else, any bosses or anything. So the game is extremely easy, and there is an easier mode. I did not play on like story mode or whatever. I played on the hardest difficulty, because there's like two difficulties. There's like take it easy mode and real gameplay mode. I chose the real one, and it was brain dead easy. I mean, it was really, really easy. There were a couple of bosses that had me on my toes a little bit, especially toward the end, but I never failed, and I'm not particularly good at these games. So if you're really into JRPGs and you've played a lot of like Final Fantasy and, Chrono Trigger and, those kinds of games, you're not Suikoden and stuff like that, you're not gonna be challenged by this game. It's extremely easy. I think if I had struggled a little bit more, it would have forced me to get used to some of the mechanics that I largely ignored, and that would have heightened the experience. Maybe the only real critique is that maybe there should have been a harder mode for people that are very experienced with the genre. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that there isn't, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not 100% sure there wasn't. But regardless, the normal difficulty in this game is extremely easy. So I think that would have heightened the experience a little bit if it had been a little bit more of a challenge. But that's, I recognize that that's, preference. So it's hard for me to levy that as an actual real critique. I think overall, I really have, and we're being extremely nitpicky at this point. I loved this game. I loved it. I'm going to be telling my friends about it, that like turn-based games for sure. Now, is it going to rank in the top 50? No, it won't. It won't rank in the top 100. It may not even probably rank in the top 150. Sea of Stars, I felt a very similar way coming away from, and I think it's ranked around 200 and something. Because this genre just isn't gonna do it for me like a Souls-like or a survival horror game or a roguelike, one of my favorite genres. So, it's got that going against it, but that has nothing to do with the game. That's about me. If I'm recommending turn-based RPGs to people, recent turn-based RPGs to people, the first words out of my mouth are going to be Sea of Stars and this. They're both a lot of fun. And I really, really enjoyed it. I really don't have any true critiques. My enjoyment level was affected by how easy it was, but you might feel differently. So I loved it. I really don't have any real critiques. And the fact that one dude put all this together is, what a wonderful, just beautiful achievement. That you can have a product like this come from one person and be phenomenal at launch. And this game was $17.99 retail. I think I got it for $14.50 or something because I have PS Plus. What a steal! Even for a short game, what a steal! What a great deal! Man, I really, really enjoyed this game. All right, last couple orders of business here before we sign off. The bottom center of the screen says that we have beaten 87 games in 2024 and 534 since we started doing this in 2020. Lies, all lies. We've now beaten 88 games in 2024 and 535 since we started doing this. Let's go. All right, last order of business. Beyond Galaxyland. It has been fun, but we are now going to delete you from our console and never play you again. Bye. Much love.